Welcome to Elite Broker, the podcast showcasing the leading players and stories of success from Australia's broking industry.
Hello and welcome back to Elite Broker. It's your host Annie Kane here today, talking to a broker you may well know in the form of Paul Biddle, founder and principal broker at Mortgage Rate Finder. Now, you might know Paul because he's been in the broking industry for more than a decade and owned his own business, Mortgage Rate Finder, for the past 7. And you may also know him from his work at the Broker Associations, having been a former New South Wales State President for the Finance Brokers Association of Australia, the FBAA. But did you know that he is also a veteran, having served 5 years in the Australian Army, including a deployment to Iraq, and also a former dance studio owner? I did not know that until I was doing research for this podcast. So in this episode, we're finding out how he had that career trajectory to get to broking, what it is that he does to build his business, and what's next for his brokerage. Thanks, Paul, for joining me. How are you going?
Well, you finally got me here.
Finally got you, yes.
About 3 years ago, you asked me we should start a podcast with you, and I said, no one would be interested in anything I'm doing.
I know, and I wore you down. So I'm very glad that you managed to let me be convincing enough to bully you in to come into the studio here in North Sydney and join me for an episode of the podcast. And I think generally, as we kind of talked about there, it's always great to see people who are not only kind of doing stuff in the broking industry as successful brokers, but also kind of giving back and working with the associations and getting involved more broadly, I think, with the community. So it's always fab to see that, and I'd love to talk about that as we go. But for anyone who's not had the pleasure of meeting you, Paul, how did you go from studio dance owner, veteran to broker? Why did you become a broker?
Well, that's a bit of a long sort of story, but the short of it is that I was studying financial planning as a career beyond being a dancer after I'd served in the military. And I'd had a meeting with Andrew Morello, who won The First Apprentice and worked for Yellow Brick Road. And I said, look, I want to get into financial planning. Can you sort of help me open some doors? And he, in the meeting, went, mate, financial planning is dying. Rethink. And I went, I'm 3/4 of the way through a degree. That's not good news for me. What am I going to do?
It's expensive, yeah.
And he literally just said, become a broker. And I said, well, that's sort of wasting what I've just done. And he goes, no, it's actually good because you haven't come from banking. So you haven't got a good banking background. But now you've got that background in financial planning and that learning from that process. So, and then here we are. So I went off and did Cert 4 and then geared up to become a broker.
Yeah. So did you join him?
Started to. The process didn't quite go to plan.
Right.
So then I became part of Finshaw's Broker Academy and went off to set up under my own. It was actually when it was first starting.
Yeah.
So I met with Simon in Melbourne. I lived in Melbourne at the time and started that process, but had a bit of a breakdown of a relationship, didn't really have the backing of financially, so I had to go out and get a PAYG broker job and found myself having to change aggregators and things like that, and then went into low deposit construction finance in Melbourne with Dennis Family Homes.
Okay, so I want to unpack some of that history there. And also, you said something about being a dancer in the army, and I was like, wait, were they two separate things?
They sort of ran. I paused a little bit during that. So straight through my formative years at school, I was dancing and playing basketball. Then went to uni for about 6 months, realised it definitely was not for me, and then joined the military. Didn't dance through that time.
Okay.
Got out of the army and then went, I still like dancing. So went back and then kicked that off. And then personal training at the same time.
Personal training. I'll move on a little bit, but what kind of dance?
Ballroom dancing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually think I did know that.
Yeah.
Because when you said it, I thought, wait, is he dancing in the army? Is this like a new type of warfare that I just did not know?
No. Yeah.
Capoeira type.
Yeah.
Really deadly dancing. Okay, so we're going to be talking a little bit then about moving aggregator, which you mentioned there. And I think this is something that a lot of brokers, if they've just started out, when the first consideration is which aggregator do I choose and how do I go about that? But a lot of them kind of ask us, well, what's the process like when you do change aggregator? What happens? What was your experience like?
Painful.
Yeah, was it?
That's literally it.
Why?
Obviously, because not only are you changing aggregators and platforms and learning how to use that new platform, you're also having to do your reaccreditation with all banks, and they handle it very differently. So some you have to pretty much start again and do all the learnings all over again. Some will just say, yep, here's your new broker code and flip you over. So it is quite a process. So I think if someone came to me today and said, hey, I've got this offering of this aggregator, do you want to change? It would have to be a very, very good offering for me to even consider it, because it is painful, and the business will shut down for a period of time, and you can't be naive about that. There's a lot to do with that sort of happening. So anytime I've even sort of considered it or thought about it, it's going to be a month where you're either going to be referring to other brokers or try to have some other plan in place. And a month downtime now leads on to settlement flows in 2-3 months' time that are going to be very slim.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is a really good word of warning almost for people changing aggregator, being like, make sure you have enough income coming through to support you if you do have downtime.
Or a backup plan, like another broker you can flick off to or refer to that is going to be able to continue trading during that time. Or you might do a staged approach if you've got multiple brokers. So you're flicking away some to a new aggregator, depending on if that works logistically for you.
Is that what you did, or do you kind of wish you did that now?
Oh, I because I was PAYG broker, I just transferred straight over, and it was pretty simple. Since being with Connective, although I did change one other time in a job change to PAYG, it was sort of on them. There was other brokers within that business. Now within my own business, as I said, it would have to be a very good offering, and it would be a lot of considerations for me to make a big choice like that.
It sounds like, I mean, you've kind of been with Connective for a while now, so fairly happy. But if there were, what is the main thing that you want from an aggregator? Like, what would you say is the main calling card that would potentially make you change?
Software would be definitely a big one. Good commission splits would be another one, and a flat fee model is appealing to me because we write quite a good volume, so I wouldn't want that commission impeded.
Yeah. And you talked earlier as well about some of the things that you first sort of specialised in. Is that still the case now, or do you do everything?
I wouldn't say I do everything. In fact, every time diversification comes up in broking, I always go, no, don't become a diverse broker. So, but there's underlying things to unpack after that. And we can be everything to a client, but we don't have to actually physically do it ourselves. We can refer on to other brokers. So for example, I had a client came to me and said, I want to buy a pub. And I went, okay, cool. Let's unpack what that is and what that's going to look like. And I straight away went, I'm going to bumble around with this for a long time before I find a home or find the right fit. So I just referred off to someone who I knew had done 3 or 4 pub finance deals in the last year, and client was happy. They still have me as their point of contact. So I consider myself a hub of information for the client, and always tell them to call me if they don't know where to go, and then I can direct them in the right way.
Yeah.
So even if they should be calling the conveyancer, for example, I tell them, just call me, I'll tell you. And I can either direct the conveyancer or, say this is who you need to speak to. Like, for example, I had a client call me and said, how do I set up an ABN? Like, because they just, you're in finance. So, and I had, at first you sort of go, well, that's not my job or my role. But I took pleasure in knowing that they called me first.
Yeah.
To go, I'm their information hub.
Yeah. And that's, I think, again, like so intrinsic to why brokers are so trusted and so well used, just because people are like, you have all this information that I need and it's convenient. I'm sure that person could have gone and researched it themselves, but they're like, but you're much more convenient for me to call, and I trust you and I know that you'll have the answer, so please help. And then you can kind of, as I say, triage.
A call last night with a client. She'd been to 2 different banks, got 2 different answers, 2 different borrowing capacities. And at the end of the call, she said, I learnt more in 30 minutes having a chat to you and feel much more comfortable about the direction I'm taking than what I did in those 1.5 hours at each bank to get told that I couldn't borrow what I needed to borrow.
That's disappointing. So what was she looking for?
First home buyer.
Wow.
First home buyer, teacher. If she'd maybe walked into the right bank, then it would have been fine. But there's a lot of policy to unpack behind that, including a teacher, got a HECS debt, relatively new to teaching, so the income isn't massive.
Yeah. Tight servicing.
Tight servicing, yeah. So, there's policies out there now that are sort of looking past some of those HECS things if we can structure them right. And the banks maybe, or the people they're talking to in branch, aren't necessarily giving them the answers that they need to go, if you pay down your HECS by $5,000, that means it's going to be paid off within 5 years. This bank servicing is going to completely change how much you can borrow.
Yeah, very interesting. And this is, again, why brokers are the channel of choice, I think, for so many Australian borrowers. So nowadays, what is your favourite type of loan to write? Like, what are you on the lookout for?
First home buyers. Yeah. I love doing construction. I've literally, the house that we're living in at the moment, we constructed, moved in about 12 months ago. Construction just finished in Adelaide of an investment property, and I've got another construction going on in the Illawarra now. So I personally just love construction. Some brokers that I chat to just go, construction, nah,
it's too hard. Yeah, loads of people say that. They're like, there's too many variables that can go wrong.
There is, but the other part that I enjoy, if you take a first home buyer that's doing construction, how much have I talked to them about their deal over the time? We've got such a good rapport. I know everything about them. I know what they're doing next. I know where they're going on holidays. I know when they're getting married. I know so much about them. And the process is so long and there's many points of contact that I'm embedded as a broker into their psyche, into their family in some cases.
Yeah. And so when you actually think about the return on it, it's partly because of the client relationship, but it's also because it's their home. Like, why else do you enjoy first home buyers so much?
Yeah. And I feel, and as I say to clients often, most wealthy people that I know that are normal wealthy people, not someone who's got rich off an app or, selling dad's business or something, they've got it through property. And so their own occupier home is ground zero for that. And they always need somewhere to live. So, and I just sort of see that, especially when it's a family and, they've been struggling. And when you give them that answer where they go, I don't think it's going to work. And then you say to them, I'm not sure who you've talked to before, but this 100% can work. And then you get them the pre-approval and then they get their property approval. That whole process, and just to see how it can change their lives. I love that. It's not, I guess in some ways I look at it and go, I love doing a deal, but we all love doing a deal and getting approval and things like that. But it's like my loan's getting approved every time I get that formal approval, especially sometimes when it's ones where you might be throwing a little bit of a Hail Mary or you've brought them back from being in a very bad position to being in a position where they can buy their own home.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think with construction, for anyone who might be listening to this who's thinking, I was one of the people that thought, I don't want to do construction. What would your advice be for someone writing construction loan, for the first time?
You just have to do it. I think at the end of the day, it's a normal loan, although it has its quirks along the way. So when you've got that land that's titling in the future, that can be scary for brokers because we're talking about people's borrowing capacity now and we're looking for that land that may not be titling for 12 months. You just have to be clear with the communication with the client and say, well, no job changes, nothing can change, no kids, savings has to be this, because sometimes I'll help clients save during that process before the land titles. So we'll have key goals along the way to go, well, we need to hit this mark to deposit with the builder. We need to hit this mark to have the deal done. So a lot can go wrong in the process. But touch wood, never had a client lose their deposit on land.
Ugh, touch wood. Don't say that out loud. And you talked as well there about yourself going through your own process and doing it. It sounds like you were probably building investment properties. Are you an avid investor yourself?
Yes. Yeah. So always looking for something. My wife does roll her eyes when I say something like I've been thinking, and she just knows straight away
oh dear,
that something's going on, or wakes up on a Saturday morning going, we're going to look at something. So it's either going to be a historic car that we're going to look at, or it's going to be a property. So
what kind of cars?
I've got right now. I've got a red MGB 1969, so convertible.
Is it roadworthy?
Oh yeah,
it drives.
Yeah, it drives.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lovely. I want to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll actually talk more about the actual broking side of things. So how you actually get your loans written, who's doing what at the company, and what sort of things you're using day to day to help you in your broking life. And we'll get into that just after this. So a lot of things, I think, when brokers first start is being like, how do I find the time and day to do everything? Because particularly, I'm thinking about this. We had our new broker academy recently, and so many brokers came up to me and were like, I just don't know how people fit it in a day or in a week because there seems to be so much. What does your process look like for actually getting done the business of broking?
Just on that, and my team will often hear me say it. With them, I'm pretty strict. If it's 5 o'clock, go home. Because we're never going to complete every task that we need to get done. So it's not like you're studying for a course and you do the final exam and it's done. That never happens in broking. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be the next email. Even the other night, I was working pretty late and I got right to the end. I thought, done. And then as I was about to close the emails, an email popped up. And of course, I couldn't help myself. I dealt with the email and then moved on. There isn't enough time to do everything, especially when you're trying to grow. So I've gone through various stages where we're just what I call panning along and just, keeping things relatively calm. But we're in a massive growth phase now. So it is literally constant. So you can't get everything done. But you do have to have some strong processes and a strong team, I think.
Yeah. So you talked there about your team. Who is who in the team? What does the mortgage rate finder look like?
Sure. So I've got an offshore processor who's recently just come on. I sort of resisted that for a little while, wanted everything to be onshore, but just realized with constraints, workloads, and ability for training and things like that we needed more manpower. And then I've got a part-time processor and a full-time processor that work in my office.
And you're the principal and sole broker?
And I'm the principal, yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite a lot of support staff. I think for maybe people who probably have just started thinking about bringing on one person, they're probably like, oh, do I need 3? Is that because they kind of share the workload and part-timing kind of, it's really like you're the broker and you've got 2?
So we've got about 50 deals under various stages of application documents out to them for them to sign or settlement booked. So that's a lot of deals to sort of manage. I personally don't do any processing myself. I personally don't do any servicing calculators or look through any statements or anything like that. I'm all about talking, having the relationship with the client, structuring the deal, and then putting out spot fires.
Yeah, so you're the strategist. Yeah. So when it came to actually hiring support, how long was it before you brought someone in to help you?
Ooh. Funny story. So the lady who's been with me for close to 7 years now, I hired her before I could afford her.
Yeah.
But I knew her quite well. She was local into the Wollongong area. I'd known her for quite a while. She was looking for a career change. And so partly she convinced me to hire her and partly I went, could be a good fit. Let's really, push it out. But she's a broker in her own right in terms of training wise, just hasn't instigated any of that, just happy to do the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I think because maybe she sees what I do and went, don't need that in my life.
Don't want to do that. Yeah. Oh, shame. So you said there that you hired her before you were kind of ready or could afford her. And I think this again is where a lot of people struggle because they're like, I really need the help, but I worry about supporting a salary.
Yep.
Did you just have to kind of back yourself and be like, well, you just got to get it done? Or did you figure out like what you needed to do in order to be able to afford her?
Anyone who knows me knows that I bite off more than I can chew and then chew as hard as I can.
Right.
So that's pretty much how, but I do have this thing in my mind that you've got to hire before you need, because we're in a phase now where we haven't done that and we're struggling a little bit with, stressing the team and including me. And then that's obviously going to have a flow on to clients, their timeframes. I'm all about speed as well. So we are very quick to get stuff back to clients and also to banks with missing information requests and things like that. So that would struggle if you can't do that. So if you're taking 2 days to get something back to a client, that's, in my mind, that's too long. If I've done a lender selection with a client the night before, they've got they've got application documents by lunch.
Wow. And you said the night before then, what kind of hours are you working?
Too long.
Do you see clients in the evening or is that just like email?
I'm all online. So I do everything via phone, sometimes Google Meets, but most of the time just by phone after I sent them emails and things like that. I'll take my last call around 6:30. And depending on how many questions they've got or where that goes to, I'm finishing around 7. I try to get in the office around 7:30.
Okay. And then when you actually look at your day, what does a typical Paul Biddle day look like?
I've got a pretty structured calendar where I just drop in things during that day, but also have a fairly open calendar for people to be able to book calls in with me as well. So they've just got a little chat link, chat with Paul, and they can book straight into my Google Calendar. It's its own little calendar on the side,
Yeah.
but my personal calendar, anything that's in there will block that out, so that I'm able to book in calls. It's actually worked quite effectively. I don't know why I didn't do it much sooner. I know people have used Calendly and things like that. I didn't quite jump on that. But definitely with the Google, because we use Google Suites as our primary source of documents and emails and things, it's definitely been a bit of a game changer too. But typical day, I'll try and bash out as much work before the team comes in, structure any jobs that I need. Then I'll take a bit of a breather and then reset and go through the next lot of jobs and calls.
Yeah. And you said earlier that you don't do any of the servicing now, but I wonder, do you know what kind of tech or tools that your team use, or is there anything that
when I say I don't do servicing, I don't jump into a bank's calculator, but Quickly is my source of truth.
Yeah.
So when I'm on the phone to someone, and I'm typically giving them answers on the phone. So I'm definitely not the sort of broker that will say, "Oh, send me all the stuff and then I'll send you stuff." I'm talking to them on the phone. Okay, how much do you earn? Da, da, da. And so I'm giving them the answers as we're talking about where I see the borrow capacity sitting and how I think we're going to structure the deal. Obviously, then we do get documents after that. But while I'm on the phone, I'm putting that stuff into Quickly. And I say to them, based on what you've told me, this income, this debt, this HEX, 2 kids, these ages, this is how much we can borrow.
Yeah. And do you find then, if you're kind of doing that initial conversation over the phone, that people are forthcoming with telling you their figures? Like, how do you build that trust?
Probably how I set it up, because I say there's no point lying or trying to tell me something I want to hear, because it's going to fall over somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're better off telling me everything now. Let's hear your life story. And usually one of the opening questions I ask them is, okay, well, where are you at in the process and what are you looking to achieve? And then they usually just start going into what they're looking at doing or where they're at. Because some people are really early doors. I've just started saving. I just need to know how much I need.
Yeah.
I'll work with those people all the way through. Even the longest that I've worked with a client is about 4 years before they bought their own home.
Wow.
They were in a bad space, but I worked with them all the way through that to get them to that point.
That's quite a lot of work. Do you charge for that?
No.
Wow. So you're just hoping that it's a settlement one day.
Here's the payoff. I did not do a deal for that client for 4 years. They've now got 2 investment properties, but along the way, off the top of my head, I could probably think of about 9 people he's referred to me.
Right.
So
good customer service pays off in the end.
Yeah.
And when you think about, I guess, the kind of ways that you support the team, and again, this is just a sort of more operational question, I guess, for a lot of brokers that might be thinking about hiring for the first time. How do you ensure that your kind of team are happy? You mentioned already about, kind of needing to hire again because they're already pretty stressed and busy. So how do you keep them sane, for want of a better word?
Every Monday we have soup or salad day, where one of us will make a soup or a salad. I probably take a few more liberties on that. Mine aren't usually a salad or a soup. I usually go into a pasta or something like that. And we literally just turn computers off and just have a chat about life and where we're at. In terms of the team, we have a very dry, we're all very much similar. We all have a very dry comedy sort of style. And I think of myself as a bit of an entertainer from The Office, the old Michael, I'm an entertainer first.
From The Office, yeah. And then when you actually look at, I guess, the company, so you said most of it is all online or over the phone.
Yep.
Do you ever, do you have an office? Do you ever see clients in face-to-face?
We've just bought an office.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so just to try and create some division. So we used to work out of the bottom of my house, so we're quite lucky we had a split level house that meant the staff could come to the house and work from there. I just realized that probably long term that's not going to work for me. So now I have to put pants on instead of shorts and go to the office.
Well, I don't know. You can still wear shorts, surely. Where is the office?
Yeah, so it's in Lake Illawarra. So we've just got a nice little cozy office in a sort of a location that's sort of changing. The demographics is changing and gentrifying, as I call it. But it's a good little place and spot. And I think the team have appreciated that as well, because it becomes, I guess it's becoming more legit, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the broking world, you can just be at home, right? Just working out of your bedroom, in bed, but now it feels like it's growing.
Yeah. And so the plan is to have people come to the office if they want to?
If they want to, yeah. And we've always had that. I've had people come to my house if that's what they wanted to do or felt more comfortable. But sometimes if they've gone, oh, no, I want to meet face-to-face, then I just say, well, that's not my service offering. So if they live in Adelaide and want to meet face-to-face, that's not my service offering, but I do know this guy. If you want to contact him, you can.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple of times about referring out to other brokers, for example, with a pub deal, or if someone's in Adelaide and you're not. How do you find brokers that you trust to refer to?
I think like-minded people find each other. So, whether it's you're at your aggregator PD days or conference, I've just ran into people and we start chatting, we're having a beer, and then it just grows from there. And social, I catch up with these people socially now as well. So, and if I don't know someone who does it directly, I know who to call who will know someone. And I guess it's part of that information hub again that I said, whereby I don't have to be everything for every client.
Yeah.
I can be that information hub, and then I'm still their trusted source of information.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we talk about quite a lot as well, is saying, when we talk about diversification, we're not saying you have to be the person that writes it, but you kind of need to find a solution for it.
Because I can't do a car dealership loan, which was another one that I referred on. So to some brokers that I trust that can handle that.
The other part, I think, of being a broker in a region like Illawarra, for example, is that so much of, I think, regional broking or broking outside of the strong metropolitan areas you're part of the community. People know who you are. You probably go to the shops and people are like, oh, yeah, hey, Paul. So when you actually come to embedding yourself in the community, do you do anything to kind of get business that way? Do you sponsor anything? Do you kind of put the company name out anywhere?
I haven't really, up until sort of recently got involved heavily in the community. And of course, having an office space as well with that branding, that helps as well, being in that local community. But we've just started to do some stuff with some local schools, because I think there's no point sponsoring something if I can't actively be there. So there's no point sponsoring a soccer club if I'm not there every week and being present, because I don't think that works. That type of community engagement and sponsorship doesn't really work. But recently, through the RSL and through another charity, we've started mowing veterans' lawns.
That's nice. And do you do that for a fee or for free?
For free,
yeah. That's nice.
Yeah, so it's for free. So it's got a bit of backing from the RSL, a bit of backing from Mortgage Rate Finder, a bit of my time and energy sort of put into it, and then a couple of the local guys, the vice president of the RSL in Wollongong, Lachlan Stevens. He's got quite a bit of charity work stuff that he does in the Illawarra, and so we've, again, like-minded people find each other. Bang, we bumped into each other. Next minute we're having a beer. Next minute we're talking about what can we do for veterans, and then his bigger picture and what he's doing.
So are you physically mowing yourself, or have you got gardeners doing it?
I am. No, I am. We've got volunteers that do assist us through that. But I every Saturday, once a month at this stage, when it gets to summer, it'll be once a fortnight. But I'm out there mowing lawns. Yeah,
I haven't mowed my lawn for a while. It reminds me I probably need to do that. It's been such bad weather.
It has, yeah. We delayed one weekend where we had to kick it on to next one weekend because the Illawarra really got smashed with a lot of water.
Yeah. And of course, this is sort of veterans are probably more front of mind for you because you are one, having been in the military yourself. Can you walk me through your engagement with veterans, whether through the RSL or from mowing? What kind of things are you doing?
So I sort of went away from anything military when I left. So it wasn't until I had my 20-year Iraq reunion where I caught up with the old guys that not old guys, they're not all old guys, but with the guys that I went to Iraq with, that I marched in Anzac Day, that I got my medals mounted, and even had some connection with them in some case. I hadn't spoken to them in that long, but that sort of sparked something in me to go, that's part of my life that I've just left and haven't connected with. And then when I came back because it was in Adelaide, and I came back to the Illawarra and met with Lachlan. He goes, why don't you join the RSL? And I've gone, why do I want to hang around with old guys? And he goes, no, it's changing. And if we don't change it and we don't come in and start that process, then it is just going to be old guys, and it is just going to die out. So that's where this new wave, president of RSL New South Wales, is a Afghan vet, quite young, like in his 40s, which is unheard of in the RSL sort of community, and it is changing.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking, it's probably a personal question, but why you weren't connected with it for so long?
I don't really know. I think I had a bit of a bad offboarding process from the military. It wasn't nice because it, in some ways, and has been in the media recently as well, it's a boys' club. So once you're not one of the boys, you're sort of on the outer. And so I think I had a bit of a bad taste in my mouth and just went, I'm done, and moved on with my life.
Became a broker.
Yeah. Well, personal trainer, dancer, then
personal
broker.
trainer, and of course, dancer, broker. It's a long job title, really. Yeah. But I think this is again looking at kind of the things that people do outside of work is always so interesting to me, and I think that it comes down to really again finding the time, and secondly thinking about what else you're doing to get yourself out there, because a lot of the time it can be a business opportunity, it can be lead generation. Yep. Do you do anything else to generate leads? Like, how do you get business now?
Yep, referrals from existing clients is the biggest one. So I often say that, on a Sunday night, I'll walk in on a Monday and have 2 or 3 referrals from existing clients just for the week.
Yeah.
That's quite typical. Got some good relationships with accountants, builders, and some conveyancers who also refer, but we've got a strong partnership with Robbo from Trusted Finance as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. So he's sort of filtering through.
I call them taps. I've got all these little taps that are just dripping, and they all fill the bucket.
Yeah. And when you first started, before, for anyone who's listening who's just in their first year, for example, and doesn't have a client base yet to refer to them, where did you find your initial clients from?
Being a PAYG broker at the time when I first started, it was through the builder. So the builder, it was low deposit finance in Melbourne, $1,000 down, deposit on land, and you're away. And then we put them into a savings program. Can be relatively high risk, but maybe that's why I don't think about it being a problem now if they've got some deposit in and we can put in a savings program. So that was definitely, I was fed those leads at the start. And you're right, as a new broker, I remember talking to an old broker at the time and he said, just step out on your own, just go out on your own. And I've gone, where are the leads going to come from? Where are the leads going to come from? That's the biggest. And there's only so much family you've got. Or network potentially. Even if you come from banking, there's only so many clients that are going to be drawn with you. So it can be quite difficult. Lead source would be the biggest one. So once I did that, I came to Sydney and worked for Alternative Media, who and they generated their own leads. And I realized then online lead generation could be a massive lead source and the way of the future.
Mm. And so did you sign up to a few?
I worked for them, PAYG. They changed their model a few times and I sort of gradually drifted away to set up what is Mortgage Rate Finder now and continued to buy their leads.
Yeah.
And then didn't need to do that anymore. My book had just started growing enough on its own that I didn't need to buy any more leads. And we've gone back to that now because we're going back into a growth phase and I really like the work that Robbo's doing.
Yeah. And this is, again, so Robbo, the Aussie mortgage guy, for anyone who doesn't know who that is, he obviously spoke at the Better Business Summit this year and I think a few years ago as well. He's a big TikToker, Instagrammer, and generates a lot of business through social media, which he then filters through to brokers through Trusted Finance. Just a little bit of background there for him. But when you think about buying leads, and I know a lot of people probably ask this question or are thinking about it as saying, I've bought leads in the past and it didn't work for me. So how do you find a reputable source or something that like what kind of advice would you give for someone who's thinking about buying leads, like to know that they're legit?
Has to come from a trusted source. So I chatted with a broker the other day that said someone had called him offering leads and it is the same old story. He actually typed that number into his phone because they gave him one. He already had that number in his phone. He'd already bought that lead before.
All right.
So you have to be careful where the source is coming from. So when I worked for Alt Media, they generated their own. I was PAYG, so I already knew what my stats were. I knew how many leads I had to buy to generate the loan volume that I needed to sustain myself. Now it's a different thing. I'm more using it for growth. But you've got to, again, try it and see. Because if you don't try it, then you're not going to know, although it's not for everyone. And I've got a fairly rigid structure about how I deal with those leads and how quickly I deal with those leads as well.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, Paul. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about what's next with business. You've been talking a couple of times about ramping up for growth, so I want to unpack that, as well as what the biggest challenges and opportunities are in the broking industry as a whole that you'd like to see potentially change, and your advice for new brokers. And we'll get into that just after this message. So, Paul, you mentioned there about, wanting to grow now and having quite a few loans coming through the doors. Firstly, let me ask you, what's driving growth for your business at the moment?
Just me realizing that if we're not doubling down and getting bigger, then we're going backwards. And I can't just sit and maintain. My personality type is always go bigger or go home.
So how are you actually growing that? What does that actually look like in reality? Are you finding that there are particularly strong cohorts of types of borrower coming to you? Are you actively looking for that type of borrower?
I personally focus solely on first home buyers and then taking them through the process to become investors, whether that be investing in their self-managed super fund with their accountant's advice or buying investment properties and leveraging off that first home. I find first home buyers to be quite needy, but they're also very sticky. So that's two things that I sort of focus on. But if anyone calls me and they need assistance, then I'm happy to help as well. But my primary focus, my eyes light up a little bit and I go, here we go, first home buyer, and we're in.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I think now, beginning of the new financial year, thinking about if they're a first home buyer, their home guarantee schemes, all the things that are opening up. And supposedly, if we ever get it from the Albanese government, one of their election promises was expanding the guarantee schemes to remove the income limits and the house price limits as well. So we'll have to wait and see what that looks like, because I don't think it will be kicking in until January. But do you see a lot of people wanting to use those sort of guarantee schemes at the moment?
Yes. So I've got a bank of clients just waiting for those caps to change.
Yeah.
Because, for example, if you're in Cairns, the limit is 550. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like for most people that need to buy a home that have children. So it's very restrictive. The property price caps didn't keep up with the market. That's just one location. It's just one off the top of my head that I dealt with the other day. So we've got two trains now. We can either pay some mortgage insurance or we can hope and pray for Jan, but also what's going to happen in January. Because I've got a bank of about 5 clients that are all waiting. I wouldn't be the only one. I wouldn't be the only broker sitting there waiting going, hey, when the price caps change, whether it's price cap of the property or the income caps change, we're good to go on Jan 1. If there's only 35,000 spots, and they did run out, right?
Yeah.
So banks ran out right towards the end of the financial year. I can only imagine what's going to happen in January if it changes. Because you're right, they've said they're going to do it.
No legislation yet.
No.
Yeah.
They also haven't trimmed our HEX debts yet either, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. So when you look at then, so 10,000 spaces, let's say, for each of the different types of guarantee schemes. I mean, there's going to be a huge waiting list for it. But also the Help to Buy scheme. Are you seeing anyone interested in the shared equity schemes?
I don't think it's a good deal. I think there's some parts of the demographics that it might work really well. So the parts that I see that type of scheme working really well is for a single mum who doesn't have the income to service the debt and needs 2 or 3 bedrooms for her children, needs to have a base and needs to just lock something down. But I think for the vast majority of people, it's actually not a good deal, the government owning part of your property, because you've then got to buy it back at some stage.
Yeah.
And I don't think necessarily the government want that on their book long term either. So although there's no end to it, property prices going up, yes, the income of the household will change. But if it is a single mum on her own through that whole journey, I don't think she'll ever be able to buy a house back, realistically.
And it's quite a lot. Let's say it's 5% or plus. That's quite a... If house prices continue going, I think by the time you actually sell, if you ever sell, kind of going, that's actually a big chunk. I don't want to give that back to the government.
I don't think there's been many buyouts yet either. So I don't think anyone has then done the buyout
Hasn't
part.
started yet for the federal one.
Yes, for the federal one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the states, some of those buyouts haven't really happened yet either. So that part would always concern me.
Yeah.
But I think generally for most people and families, it's not a good deal.
Yeah. Okay. And when you look at then other things sort of coming through your door, I mean, obviously rate easing cycle at the moment. Lots of people were surprised by the July decision. Just want to say I wasn't. But then lots of people now saying August rate cut, November rate cut, maybe one in February. Are you seeing potential and prospective current and prospective clients waiting for rate reductions before they move, or are they moving already?
The problem I see with that is if they're waiting for rate cuts, what's that going to do to the actual property market and the purchase price they're going to be buying in at? So we can all wait. And then if there's heaps of activity and the prices jump X amount in terms of in different locations, what's that really going to mean for your home loan anyway? So the throwaway line that I use all the time, the best time to buy a house was 20 years ago. The next best time is now.
I agree. And I think that's something that we always kind of say to brokers is sort of saying, like, how do you have that conversation with clients? Because a lot of the time brokers are like, it kind of sounds like I'm selling. Like, if I'm saying that, they're thinking, oh, you're only saying that because you want the business. But I think it is true.
I'm pretty down to earth when I talk to my clients, and I'll often use the line, okay, do you want real talk or do you want me to sugarcoat it? Which one do you want me to do? Do you want me to tell you what you want to hear and be nice? Or do you want me to tell you, hey, you need to buy now because it's not going to get any easier?
Yeah. And when you look then, I guess, at the sort of broader industry, so in broking specifically, I mean, you've done a lot of work with the Broker Association, the FBAA. Why did you get involved in the broking community to kind of give back in that way?
I guess I just saw Peter White and the work that he was doing during the Royal Commission, and I went, I just started my business a few months before the Royal Commission stuff really started to play out. And I was sitting there on election night. I've never watched a whole election night until that night. Getting drunk, but who would have thought? Because I thought, what am I going to do if I can't be a broker? What am I going to do now? And as I've said before, I'm all in. So I went all in at broking. There was no plan B. It was, this has to work. I have to write deals. I had a little bit of seed money set aside for security, but I had to make it work. So I looked at that and went, we dodged a bullet there, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And so then you became the New South Wales president.
Yep.
What does that even entail?
Basically engaging with brokers locally. So we do coffee meets, I host FBAA events, new member calls as well. And that was quite enlightening. I mean, you had the new broker Academy series. Chatting to new brokers was a bit eye-opening actually, because I've gone, there's a fair bit of stuff that you're not doing that you probably need to be doing.
Like what? Voicemail
on who am I calling? So if I call you and it's just the generic voice to text, what? That blew my mind. Also, the amount of brokers that were doing it as a bit of a side hustle. Because I look at that and go, how could you do that? That's almost impossible in my world. How can you focus?
Yeah, we actually had a lot of part-time brokers come to New Broker Academy, and I think by the end of it, they were like, wow, we did not realize how much work this was going to take to actually kind of ramp up for the numbers they wanted to achieve. Like I remember someone hearing James McCracken was doing a session and he was like saying, how many loans do you expect to be writing a month in dollar value? And someone said 20 million. And he was like, sorry.
Yep.
Like, good luck. But yeah, so I think like kind of looking at, he's like, maybe let's bring that down a little bit. But I think that as well, like people think of the numbers of broking and they see, like the kind of commission and they go, that's amazing. I want that income. But it's like, that's not income. You've got to take all your costs off that as well.
My fear is as well, sometimes they're sold the dream.
Yeah.
They're sold the dream of, you could be making this much money.
Exactly.
But I've got subscriptions that come out of my credit card like no man's business.
Yeah.
Quickly, Equifax,
Aggregator,
Aggregator, like ChatGPT, like there's so many, Google, there's so many things that just come out as subscriptions that are all relatively inexpensive. They add up to be quite expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not easy being a business owner.
No.
But saying that, I wonder if you were king of the broking industry for a day, what would you change? What are your biggest bugbears in industry?
Probably the biggest one. I had to think about this because you've got to be careful what you wish for. Because if we change too much stuff, that could have flow-on effects to other things. And I think we've got a pretty good gig. The mortgage broking business model and the mortgage broking world, I love. It's great. And it's served me very well. But the biggest thing I think that's probably annoyed me over the last week has just been, can the credit assessors just read my notes? If they just read my notes, those 4 first questions you asked me, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Do you think that's an issue that they just don't read them, or that they don't get sent to them properly?
No, they don't read them. Yeah, because when I say, can you open my notes up? And then they quickly shuffle to do that. And they've gone, oh, yeah. Oh, yep. Okay, we were closing that credit card. Okay, now it services. Yep. So that's probably part. And the other part is the banks giving the credit assessors the ability to make the decisions on the phone. So why in a first home buyer guarantee scheme do we have to go to higher credit? Why isn't the credit assessor trained already to handle that file, sign it off and move it on? Why are we 2 more days at higher credit, then back, then they've got to issue the formal approval? Just the delays, like that's completely inefficient in my mind. That'd probably be the 2 biggest things from, say, the banks, and they're all guilty of it in various forms. Yeah.
And then looking into the future, so we've kind of talked about what's going to be happening from a sort of borrower perspective this year, but what's happening at Mortgage Rate Finder this year? What are you ramping up for in the next sort of 12 months to, a couple of years?
Definitely growth. So we're definitely writing way more volume and putting more loans onto the loan book. But we're definitely looking at hiring more. So probably some offshore based stuff, but hopefully we've got a family member coming into the business, which will be quite exciting as a career change. And we'll go through the process of being a processor and then with the aim to go on and be a broker, but learn the business from the back end all the way through.
And then for you personally, any plans for the year ahead?
Just holidays, going to the US over Christmas. I'm married to a teacher, so school holidays is the time to travel, even though it's the worst time for weather.
Very expensive as well.
Not as much as you think. $800 return to LA using points. So that deal I could not get past. So that got booked very quickly when I saw that.
Fair enough. And anything else that you're doing?
Oh, definitely. So coming up very soon, walking the Kokoda track with Walk With Us, the charity that Lachlan Stevens runs. And a whole bunch of veterans are going to walk the Kokoda track and learn what those guys went through.
That's a hard track. How far is it for anyone who doesn't know?
I think the parts that we're doing, it's like 120 kilometers, the part that we're doing.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's very long.
Yeah.
It goes coast to coast. Yeah, and very mountainous. Yeah. And I actually met a few weeks ago the last remaining veteran from the Kokoda.
Oh, track. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
At the Kokoda Memorial in Rhodes.
Wow. Cool. And that sort of, I guess, gives me some insight into what you might do outside of your broking career. I know you're a keen dancer and a personal trainer. And actually, that reminds me, so many people tell me they listen to this podcast in the gym. So if you've got any advice as a PT for what they should be doing to improve their game, what would that be?
So far removed from that now. I often joke, I go, I work very hard for this average body that I've got. It's probably consumed too much liquid goodness and bottles of wisdom, but I probably would steer clear of giving advice around that because I'm not insured to give personal training advice. Yep. So I'd probably steer clear of that. But advice, definitely, in terms of work-life balance, I often hear, you need a work-life balance. I'm going for a blend. I think a work-life balance to me doesn't work. I lock things in, then just make them happen. So I try and get up at 5, go to the gym. I say try. It's been very difficult recently with how cold it's been. Go to the gym. No one can take that away from me. Once I've gone to the gym, that's it. No one's calling me at 5 a.m. So it's done. For example, the Kokoda, they said, these are the dates. Can you do it? Didn't even look at my calendar, just said yes. Because if I don't lock it in, it's not going to happen. So I lock it in, then make everything work from there. Yeah. So that's how I blend.
Commit to it. And finally, Paul, any advice you'd give either to new brokers just starting their journey now, or if you were going to be starting again, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't be a new broker going out on your own. Work within a group of brokers that can support you and help you through the journey, or work as a PAYG, go through the process of being a processor, learning the business, then becoming a broker, because that will give you a foundation for so much stuff and a bit of security and a bit of confidence to move forward. But I do fear that sometimes people come into broking as potentially I did, a little bit too naive, going, I'm going to write these big numbers, I'm going to get this done, and realize that that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It takes a bit more time in the oven, as I say, than that.
Awesome. Paul Biddle from Mortgage Rate Finder, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story on Elite Broker. Best of luck for the new financial year and the growth ahead.
My pleasure. Thanks for that.
If you've got any questions for me or for Paul, then do feel free to reach out. You can reach me at editor@theadvisor.com.au and Paul Biddle at Mortgage Rate Finder. And of course, take a listen back to previous episodes of Elite Broker on the Advisor Podcast Network. We'll catch you next time. We hope you have a fab week.